In the past, I've told myself that ghosts weren't real. I wanted to believe that no creator, whether benevolent or simply apathetic, would condemn someone to that kind of half-existence. But never force that kind of irresolution on someone who didn't deserve it. During college, I often found myself arguing this passionately with people who claimed to have first-hand experience dealing with the supernatural, who claimed to have seen with their own eyes the apparitions and specters of the spiritually undead. I dismissed their claims, insulting their lack of empirical evidence, and laughed at their anecdotes. When I was 17, my girlfriend, my very first, died in a car accident. It was only her third time driving since getting her license, and the first time she had driven alone on the highway. We lived in a small, semi-rural area and rarely had the need to venture beyond the simple 2-lane roads. I was proud of her. She'd always been terrified of taking that first step, and I wanted to let her know that she was going to be all right. I sent her a text message, confident that she wouldn't read it while driving. She did, apparently. And that brief lapse in attention caused her not to notice a shift in traffic and a series of small yet critical events played out, which led her to eventually crashing, rolling her car several times until it came to rest, upside down, only to be slammed into by another car that hadn't managed to apply its brakes in time. Her car caught fire, and due to the state of it, she was unable to escape. She died in the inferno. I told myself that I had been responsible, as I'm sure anyone in my situation would. I assigned the blame to myself based on the timing, even though my family had tried to tell me that any number of factors could have attributed to the accident. My mother was aware of Annalise's fear of driving on the highway and suggested that perhaps that fright alone had caused the accident. My father, with the kindest intentions, offered the thought that maybe no one was to blame. Or if someone were, it shouldn't be the person who sent the message, but the person who took their eyes off the road to read it. I mean, he offered this with the softest voice, but it still felt like a gut punch. To blame Annalise for her own death, I couldn't imagine doing such a thing. 3 years passed. I graduated high school. I kept Annalise's memory alive within me. For the sake of my own mental health, I tried not to let her hold me back from continuing with my life. And you know what? For the first few weeks while endeavoring to do that, I felt guilty for wanting to move on. But my father, always rational, he told me that I shouldn't let a high school love, he actually said love and not infatuation as you'd expect, keep me bogged down for the rest of my life. I accepted that. Saw the sense in it. And I heeded his wisdom. College came and went. A few girlfriends even did as well, and I found myself owning a house, blessed with a career, and immersed in a social group of like-minded individuals with whom I could share my highs and lows. My uncertainty about the role I played in Annalise's death still occasionally crept up to bring me stress and bouts of self-loathing, but I had improved enough to be outwardly all right. Yesterday I had been sitting at my kitchen table reading over some documents for work when I started to feel uneasy. It was as if I had sensed something unconsciously, and my body reacted to the mysteriously perceived stimuli, leaving my conscious mind to wander. Nothing about my environment changed. The kitchen was as bare and immaculate as ever. I'm a fan of decorating, and then the lighting hadn't flickered or grew dim. But still, there was an inexpressible change about myself. Something which seemed to arise from within the core of my being and spread outward so that every nerve, every sense organ was in some minor way touched by the phenomena. I stood up and I walked into the living room, hoping that my symptoms had only arisen from sitting down for too long. My father's voice always playing in my head during times of stress or worry. He told me not to panic, expressed that whatever it was endurable, curable. Nothing a bit of exercise or a change of scenery couldn't fix. I forced myself to hear his words, to accept this reasoning, even though I knew that the source of my unrest was not an affliction of the body. It was not caused by sedentary activity, but came from something else. I found myself walking out of my front door and heading towards my car, which I left parked outside. It was a nice, bright day. Sun still shining overhead despite it nearly 6 o'clock. I got in my car. 2019 Black Mazda 6. And before I could consciously make up my mind to do so, I pulled out and drove down the street. I still felt weird. I felt changed. But I couldn't identify why. I made several turns without thinking, as if to shake away the oddness from my body, and eventually, I got onto the highway that led to the city. The traffic was light, an oddity given the time, but everything else was otherwise existing and operating normally. Only I felt unusual. And the drive hadn't yet served to alleviate the mounting uneasiness. The feeling rose and then peaked intolerably. My body stiffened as if it had been charged with an electric current, and my head suddenly felt heavy as if my brain had been switched out with a cannonball. I was already gripping the wheel quite firmly, and so I tried to brake, but my feet and legs, they were frozen in place. Traffic had slowed ahead, and I couldn't decrease my speed or hope to turn the wheel to navigate the cluster of cars. I sped on, immobile, without any control of the vehicle beyond my statue-like depression on the gas pedal. Let me help you with that. I heard the voice, recognized it, but I couldn't turn my head to verify what my ears wanted me to believe. But then a hand reached across my vision, reached over to grasp the wheel and turn it. Veering the car into the median, the car mounted and elevated the platform, and as it did so, a woman's body sat in my lap. It nudged my foot off the pedal, removed my hands from the wheel, and took control of the car. Still frozen, I sat there as this woman who had inexplicably appeared pulled the car back onto the road and drove on as if nothing had happened. I stared forward, seeing only the back of her head, but knew from her scent and the feel of her body that she was Annalise, my girlfriend who had died years ago. I didn't know if I should feel relieved or terrified. I couldn't even ask a single question. My vocal cords in my mouth, they were as frozen as the rest of me. She didn't speak or give any impression that the circumstances were out of the ordinary. We drove for nearly 15 minutes before she pulled off the highway. She brought the car to a rest on a road beneath it. She turned off the engine, then slid off my lap and exited the vehicle. As if a spell had been broken, I was immediately relieved of my paralyzed state and all of the strange symptoms that had preceded it. They left me as well. I got out of the car to find her standing in front of a pothole in the street. The road was poorly maintained and various crevices had been filled with rainwater. The one she stood near was almost as wide as a manhole cover, filled nearly to the brim. She was dressed in the same t-shirt and jeans that she had been wearing on the day of her death, but her physical appearance was marked differently. She had aged, grew in size, although the passage of time had wrought certain alterations on her skin. She seemed both frail and powerful, like some kind of wizened sorcerer, harboring hidden magical abilities or an ancient corpse, recalled from death by potent necromancy. Her eyes were afire with some internal conviction, a purpose that had apparently disregarded the permanence of death. Her sable hair, kept long, but otherwise undecorated, had lengthened to her elbows, tonally contrasted with her ashen skin. She gazed at me for a while, as if trying to make up her mind about my appearance, and then without any sort of greeting, she pointed down to the puddle below her. I looked into the murky waters and I saw nothing of interest, and then returned my gaze to her. I wanted to ask her a million questions, but a sense of dread arose inside me, and something about her appearance and composure seemed not so vaguely malignant. Reach into the puddle and remove what's inside. Her voice sounded as normal as ever, aged in accordance with her physical stature, but otherwise unaffected by the mausolean stresses that had ravaged her body. I felt tears begin to well in my eyes, and I wanted to say so many things, most importantly, to apologize. But I waited and obeyed her command. The puddle was deeper than I initially suspected, and it wasn't until the surface was up to my elbows that I felt anything. I grasped the object and I withdrew my arm, shaking off the dirty water. I held an old cell phone, a silver Motorola flip phone. It had been degraded by exposure to countless cycles of rain and sun, but I still recognized it as Annalise's. I looked up at her, confused. Open it. I didn't see what use that would be. The thing was irreparably damaged. She had also been dead, so I did what she wanted and I opened the phone. The faces of the buttons had been worn away or faded away, and the body had lost all of its silver shine. The screen was finely cracked, but somehow displayed a flickering image. It was an open text message. A chill swept through me as I read the words aloud. You'll be fine, Annie. I love you. You'll be fine, huh? I looked up and I saw the fire that had been in her eyes spread across her face. Her skin fractured, and from the cracks came spurts of literal fire. I rose and jumped away, but she pursued me with a quickness I hadn't expected or capable of, considering her condition. She seized me by the throat with one hand and pressed her face into mine. I shut my eyes as the flames singed my skin, and my mouth opened to cry out, but hers opened as well, and she inhaled the breath and sound from my scream. With her other hand, she snatched the phone away from my grasp and effortlessly crushed it to bits. She finished inhaling, stealing the breath from my lungs, and then tossed me to the ground. The cracks on her face resealed themselves, and the fire inside her down. Settling once again behind the glare, I was weak. I was drained of vitality, and my face felt as if I had let the fire of the sun assault it for hours. She looked down at me with a strange sadness. Totally unlike the anger I had detected in her eyes just moments before. I thought I even saw a tear briefly form before evaporating from the heat that radiated from her body. What will I be? Her voice was soft. She sounded frightened. I tried to speak, but my voice broke. So I gave myself a moment to recompose and tried again. Tears fell freely from my eyes. You'll be fine. Her lips had begun to form a smile before her body was consumed by fire. She burned for only a few moments before it annihilated her, leaving nothing where she had once stood. She hadn't screamed. I sat there on the ground for what could have been hours, crying over Annalise's death for the second time in my life. Eventually, I got up, I returned to my car, and I drove home. During the drive, I remembered all the conversations I had with people who believed in ghosts. Many of them asserted that one reason a spirit could be bound to the mortal plane, never allowed to move on, was if some part or aspect of them had been left behind. Or if any issue they had with someone had been left unresolved. As if on cue, the reason for the terrifying and heartbreaking ordeal came to me as I pulled into my driveway. Annalise had taken me to the spot where her cell phone had landed, when presumably thrown from her car during that vehicular carnage. I doubted the item itself had acted as her anchor to the physical realm. I mean, it was just a phone after all. But I think it was the content of the message, and the doubt which lived within me regarding my impunity in the matter. I had never forgiven myself, and I kept her, an aspect of her, within me, within my memory, while I was certainly left breathless by her draining kiss. What she really took from me was the memory of her, and the guilt as well. At least that's what I think happened. My face still burns. I had found and held her phone without having any knowledge of where it was located. I didn't, and I still don't know where exactly the accident occurred. So I know that what happened to me was real. It wasn't some guilt-inducing morbid fantasy. I went inside and I was prepared to take a shower when my phone beeped from a text message alert. The number was unknown. The message read, "You'll be fine. I love you." I suppose I brought it upon myself. See, I was always that friend that would go out of their way to tell you that they weren't afraid of anything. Whenever we went to see a scary movie, I would sit like a rock in my seat. That wasn't all that scary. I really saw my friends. I would walk through the parking lot and they would just look at me and scoff. Every Halloween we'd go to that haunted house attraction, and I always had to be that asshole that gives the people just doing their jobs some lip. It's not a personality trait that I'm particularly proud of. But rest assured, I got it straightened out with a little help from my friends. You see, I'd been thrown for a loop when the factory I was working for ended up going under just in a couple of weeks, and management kept it tight-lipped. So one week I was employed, the next I was looking through papers trying to find someone new. As annoying as I could be sometimes, I still had friends who would help me out when I needed it. So it didn't come as a huge surprise when one of them called me up and told me that they had found a job that was perfect for me. It was a position for a night guard at some checkpoint outside of an office building. It was a pretty far drive, and the site was fairly isolated from any other building, but I needed a job as soon as I could find one, so I agreed to give it a go. Now, little did I know, it was a front. I'm sure most of you heard of the show, and if you haven't, don't worry, it hasn't been relevant for quite some time. For those of you who don't know, the show was, in concept, a prank show. They'd bring the victim into various situations, but most typically, it would be a new job. They would make the job sketchy, and they try to scare the victim with some monster or a crazy person, stuff like that. Had a couple of seasons, died off, then came back for a handful of seasons, and my episode was to air in the first batch of seasons. Before you go thinking my buddy was being cruel by making me think that I'd found a job when I didn't, he did have work lined up for me, but decided it would be worth it to mess with the big brave boy first. My shift would start at night, long after the sun had gone down. I watched the beams from my headlights cast over the small booth as I pulled into the dirt path. I was immediately stopped by a rather large and intimidating fella stepping out of the booth. He asked me my name and why I was there, to which I replied that I was the new guy. He chuckled and he went back into the booth. I watched him pick up a walkie-talkie and mumble into it. Walking back out, he asked me to leave the car, explaining that we weren't supposed to go back there, and that someone would come to park my car for me. I looked up at the back there that he was talking about. It just looked like a normal office building, maybe 6 or 7 stories high. Sure enough, after a few moments, someone showed up. Seemingly from nowhere, took my keys from me. I was a little uneasy about it, but I needed the job, so I didn't make a fuss about it and just hoped for the best. Then the man guided me into the booth as the other one drove away with my car towards the building. I was shown everything I needed to know about the job and what exactly I was supposed to be doing. All I had to do was keep an eye on who exited and entered the path, make sure all license plates and ID cards matched up with what we had on file, and radio the office if there was any issues or discrepancies. It seemed like a relatively easy job, and the pay was good, so I wondered why they might have needed someone on such short notice. Then it was explained to me, and I discovered why my friend said it was a job that would be perfect for me. The man told me that not many cars come and go through the overnight shift, so it can get pretty lonely. Lonely and quiet. Sitting in the booth all night surrounded by mostly darkness and dirt would make some people a little stir-crazy. People would quit the job reporting they had heard noises in the distance or saw some humanoid shape walking around unaccounted for. Well, because I always said that I wasn't afraid of anything. My friend probably thought that my arrogance would hide how sketchy and weird the whole situation was, and, well, he was right. I laughed at the notion of being afraid of the dark, and the man smiled at me before telling me the most important part of the job was just to keep my wits about me. After another few minutes of casual conversation, he told me that his shift was over and that I would be on my own, repeating to call the office if I needed anything. Then it was just me, sitting in that booth. It was isolating, for sure, and when I saw that my phone had no service, I readied myself for one very long night. At least an hour had passed without any activity to speak of. Not a single car coming in or going out. It wasn't getting to me, but I could see why someone might get a little antsy sitting out there. It was just a little too cold to really settle in. And then I heard the first, let's say, oddity. They couldn't have been quieter out there, and I could have heard someone breathing from a mile away. Instead, I heard a low hum that sounded like an old fridge kicking in. I looked around the darkness as the noise continued for a few seconds before disappearing again. With a heavy breath, I tried to calm myself, speaking aloud that it was just some animal. It wasn't long after that I heard the distinct sound of footsteps against the dirt. It sounded so close, but no matter where I looked, I couldn't find the source of the noise. It sounded too loud to be caused by some small animal. And that's when I saw it in the distance. A tall and looming figure that was enveloped by shadows. The thing was just standing there, facing the booth. I could still hear footsteps, though. I heard a faint whine ring out, and an alarm, and when I looked behind me, I saw that the building had red lights pulsing all around it. It was my first night there, but I didn't need to be a genius to know that something was wrong. I picked up the walkie-talkie and tried to communicate that someone was on the premises. And when I looked back up, the figure was gone. Just the expanse of darkness was before me, and just below the distant alarm. I could hear the hum again, much closer this time. Turning my head slowly, I was met with the same figure inches away from the glass. Its skin was pulled tight and seemed to have rips and tears, revealing a fleshy interior. My heart raced, and immediately I fell backwards, opening the door to the booth behind me. I'll admit, I was moments from wetting my pants. As I ran away from the booth, I heard a voice calling after me. I turned to see the man who had taught me how to do the job. He was running after me, waving his arms all around. I stopped to let him catch up to me, curious about what he was even doing here. "What happened?" he asked me, nearly running out of breath. I explained to him the things that I heard and the creature that I came face to face with. "Are you scared?" he asked me in an almost mocking tone. "Yeah, of course I'm scared," I replied, with a little more gusto than I intended. "Well, you shouldn't be." He took a deep breath and straightened his back. "Because you're on scare tactics," he exclaimed, loud enough for his voice to echo through the vastness around us. And just then a black van pulled up behind me and a small crew filed out, most notably a cameraman and a boom mic operator. The beast I had seen slowly walked into the frame as I tried to come to terms with the nonsense around me. I watched as the thing pulled its mask off to reveal just a normal-looking guy underneath it, bearing a wide smile. "Your friend set you up," the man explained, pointing towards the darkness. We all stood quietly like we were waiting for something. I got worried when the crew started giving cautious looks to each other. I heard the cameraman mutter about where the rest of the crew was, but there was no answer. The guy playing the creature looked back at the office building, still pulsing with red lights. "The hell's going on over there?" he questioned the rest of the crew, but again there was no answer, and I was getting the feeling everyone was becoming just as confused as me. I started to grow concerned for my friend. I had seen the show before. He was supposed to come out and he was supposed to laugh at me, but there was there was nothing but silence. Again, from seemingly nowhere, someone approached from the direction of the office building. He was screaming as he ran towards us, and before we got close enough, he dropped to the dirt and stopped moving. What is this? I asked, growing furious. This isn't us, the camera operator replied. His voice was shaky and sincere, and it was enough to drop my heart. From the direction of the building was another approaching figure. This one walked calmly with heavy footsteps. The closer it got to the van, the more the van's headlights revealed about the lumbering figure. Comically white skin stained red. Spurts of blood were pouring out where the figure's left arm would have been like it was torn off. It walked like it was uncertain of how to hold itself up, like a newborn doe. It was at least a foot taller than any of us there. Its right arm hung low and dragged a hand across the dirt, one that ended in gleaming and sharp claws. The man who was dressed as the creature for the show started to speak the moment he created a noise. The thing lunged forward and it pounced on him. His screams were muffled as the creature tore away at his body, red splashes spilling into red dirt. It looked like the ground was rusted as it soaked the crimson in. None of us were able to move, stunned by the sight of the thing rubbing its head against the now motionless man. His head was easily the most unsettling part. It was the shape of a human's, but it was like someone had dragged a knife from top to bottom all around it, like its head was made out of rows of gills, slit flesh that squirmed, creating openings that tore away at the man that it had mounted, strips of flesh hanging out of small gaps. I remember the man screaming and thought that must have been what lured it towards us, and how it pounced the actor when he made noise. Carefully, I bent over and I grabbed the rock that was by my feet. Trying to make as little noise as possible, I tossed the rock, and when it pinged against the ground, I watched as the creature's gills flared and widened the openings. I could see the shining red, viscous membrane behind the gills, and the small rows of sharp teeth that lined them. If we tried to make it to the van, that thing would no doubt rip us to shreds. But when I turned towards the boom mic operator, an idea formed. The thing was as still as a rock, with its gills still flared open, waiting for a noise to attack. All I had to do was move quieter than the distant alarms, and slowly I shuffled over to the boom mic and stared into his eyes, trying to convey that I had a plan. I don't know how I was even able to orchestrate my body at all. The only explanation I had is that an unreal amount of adrenaline must have been coursing through my body, and slowly I reached forward and pulled the headphones off the guy's head. I pointed at the boom mic, and then at the wheel of the van, and then the front of the van. The camera and the mic operator took a moment to get what I was going for, but they soon nodded in understanding. I hope to God they understood the plan, and that it would even work if they did. As I stepped towards the creature that now had a small, scarlet pool around it, looking like the most gruesome moat I've ever seen. Looking behind me, I saw the other two guys get into position, and the actor who taught me how to do the job also slowly moving towards the van. The creature, no longer hearing a threat, allowed the open spaces at its head to close again. Hoping it wouldn't be able to feel it, and that hearing was its only sense, I gently dropped the headphones onto its head. My hands were so shaky that I was worried I'd become the next victim the moment the headphones touched it. But still, it remained unmoving. Thankfully, the sound of its own blood from its missing arm dripping into the pool of the other actor's gore was enough to mask my noises. Once the headphones were on, I started to back away, but looking at the closed gills, I didn't think the plan would work unless they were opened. I lifted my arm and I held up 3 fingers, then 2, then 1. Before putting the last finger down, I began to shout. It all happened so quickly. As soon as my voice left me, the thing's head started to open up again. Right as the creature rose towards me, the sound of the van's horn started to blare behind me. I turned away from the creature and started running towards the van, and when the cameraman's hand still firmly pressing the horn down and the boom mic operator dropping it in front of the van to continue amplifying the noise, we all started to pile in, swinging the door shut. I watched the thing drop to its knees, clawing desperately at its head but missing the headphones over and over. It ripped and tore at the flesh covering its head, dropping thin trails of blood to paint its white exterior. The van quickly backed up and continued to do so until we could no longer see the writhing creature. No one said a word as we drove down the highway. Part of me kept hoping that someone would say that was a prank too, but that was naive. When they dropped me off, I was told to expect a call, and the next day I got one. It was from the producers, and I ended up in a meeting with them. One where they went over the details with me. One where a very well-dressed man sat quietly. I remember the logo on his badge. It's the same one on the building from that night. The man and the producers offered me a lot of money to keep my mouth shut about what happened, along with returning my car. I didn't think anyone would believe me if I spoke out anyway, so I took the offer. I'm only talking about it now because it's the anniversary of when my friend and whatever crew he was in went missing. The episode never made it to the air, and the footage of it is something that I'm sure was burned and buried a long time ago. I don't know that this show ended this season my episode was meant to appear in. At least until it picked up again sometime later. I'm much easier to scare nowadays. You know, just knowing things like that creature exist out there. Just remembering how infantile its behavior was. Like it hadn't even reached maturity yet. And I'm thinking of what a mature version of that thing might never cease to make me shiver. I can't imagine what's going on in the walls of that building. And I hope the world never has to find out. Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and before we get started on tonight's story, I wanted to tell you about Good and Evil, Light and Dark, and the Gray Mists in Between. It's a book by Caedmon Holland, the author of tonight's story, and you can get it right now on Amazon and from Barnes & Noble. Link is down below. The axe finally managed to break through the large oaken door, enveloping me in more heat from the inside of the flaming inferno that used to be a large manor house. Black smoke, already pouring out from any opening in the structure that had been created by the raging flames, cascaded over me and my crew. And I once again thank God for the sealed mask and air pack on my back. Even though my vision was clouded, I raised the axe again and continued my chopping at the door. Now that I managed to finally put a large crack in it, it only took a few more desperate swings, and the door was splintered enough to allow us to enter the home. Normally, for a fire this large, we would have concentrated more on damage control. There was no way we could save the house. And our efforts would be focused on making sure the fire didn't spread, and no one, including us firefighters, would get hurt. However, this situation was different. We knew people were home. The number of cars parked in front of the house proved this, yet the neighbors who called us said that they hadn't seen anyone exit the place since the fire began. And what was worse, the family who owned the place had a 6-year-old girl named Mary. Almost everyone in town knew Mary. She was such a sweet and friendly soul. Any charitable events that we had held for any reason, she wanted to be there to help. I personally have received many of her homemade cookies she'd bring by the fire station to thank us for just being firefighters. Didn't matter if they were any good or not. Her cute smile and the bright demeanor while she delivered them made everyone's day. Imagining such a preciously little girl somewhere in this hellscape, frightened and hurt, added an extra strength to every swing of my axe, and I knew that every other member of this crew felt the same way to save her as I did. As soon as the door finally broke down, we all rushed in, keeping to our training, but with the added surge of adrenaline to try and rescue as many as we could. Though the spirit was willing, our flesh was almost too weak. Inside the home, the heat was far worse than anything I'd ever experienced. The smoke, much more blinding and choking and thick. It was a swirling, hot mass of light and darkness that threatened to envelop and overwhelm anyone who encountered it. It seemed impossible that anyone could still be alive in this place, but we still had hope. We had a job to do. Team Alpha, we're going to check upstairs. Team Bravo, you're going to clear the ground floor, and Team Charlie, head to the basement and check for civilians. Our lieutenant's voice rang over my ears only seconds after the 9 of us had entered. I answered back over my handset with a Team Charlie, copy on headed to basement to check for civilians, and along with my teammates Johnson and Roberts, prepared for our team's descent into the basement. Not one of the three of us were happy to have to go to a basement. I mean, sure, heat and fire rises, but the basement usually has no way out other than a single staircase, and if the house falls on top of itself, being in the lowest level was a sure death. Still, it had to be done, and we had each other for support. We reached the door that led to the basement and found it locked. I put my trusty axe to use again, and the door was broken down in 10 seconds. It was like a dam had broken, and even more black smoke poured up from the bottom. This let us know the fire probably originated from down there, and there was probably not a single living soul in the basement. But we had to check on the small chance that someone was. Even though we were nearly blind, we made our way down through the encompassing darkness. When we reached the bottom floor, all three of us had a feeling that something was wrong. Not like a structure on fire has anything right about it, but the circumstances were all different from anything we'd ever seen or heard about before. Though smoke was still flooding through the staircase, not a single speck of it touched the main road that we found ourselves in. It was like a glass wall was keeping the black vapor only in the vicinity of the staircase. Also, the fire that covered the floors, walls, and ceiling seemed off. I've never seen flames so red, and they were only red. The fire can burn as many different colors, but it never burns just one color. Yet the three of us were surrounded in a room of red that seemed to devour any other color aside from the black smoke. We only stared around in awe for a moment before our training kicked in and we set to work searching for survivors. It turned out the basement was far bigger than we had thought. In fact, it was so big we decided that we had to split up to search for people. It was dangerous to do that, but time was a major factor here. Even more so for poor souls that still were alive down there. I ended up going down a long hallway that ended up in decent-sized rooms that looked like a workout room. Glancing around, even with my mask on, I could tell there was no one in the room. I was just about to leave when a glint in the fire caught my eye. There was an iron door built into the wall, seemingly cut into the stone that made up the rest of the basement walls. It didn't look to be made out of traditional iron, but something black and twisted gave off a very off-putting aura around it. I didn't want to have to go near the thing, but I knew that I had to, just to make sure. As I approached, sounds from beyond the abhorrent thing other than the crackling of fire reached my ears. Screams, crying, and moaning. On instinct, I rushed to the door, trying to find a way to open it. It looked like the glint that caught my eye earlier was a large doorknob that had some sort of gemstone encrusted into it. The knob was that of a clawed demonic hand, clasping a ruby, and looking at it brought a bad taste to my mouth. I didn't want to waste any more time looking at the door, however. I was more concentrating on how to get past it to the people behind it. I knew my axe would be useless, so before I potentially injured myself ramming into the door, I decided to try the knob. The heat I felt on my hand was more powerful than anything I'd ever felt before in my life, even with a protective glove. What I did was obviously stupid and against everything I'd ever been taught to do, but hearing the chorus of suffering in the space beyond the door made me desperate and foolish, thinking of others before my own safety. Of course, that's a stupid way to do stuff because if I get injured, I wouldn't be in any position to help anyone. Miraculously, the knob turned and the door swung open on its own. I began to hurriedly enter the room, preparing to direct as many people as I could to safety. I managed to take 2 steps in before I froze in place. Though I was surrounded by fire that burned hotter than anything I'd ever felt before, my blood ran ice cold in my veins at the sight before me. Silhouetted in the red glow of the unnatural fire that ringed me in the rooms were bodies. They were charred. So much their twisted black skeletons were the only things remaining of them. Yet to the horror of my disbelieving eyes, these bodies, though only burnt bones remained, were not dead. They flailed about on the ground, writhing and screaming in agony. Hands, wreathed in flames, tore at themselves, as if they were trying to grab the fire that covered their very bones and tear them off of them. Others scrambled and scratched at the floor and walls in desperate attempt to search for an escape from the enveloping blaze that smothered them. Lungs, vocal cords, and tongues had been burnt to ash, yet I could hear their wails and tormented cries. Some managed to form words, crying for mercy and forgiveness, but most just let loose with pitiful shrieks, pooling together to make their choir of suffering and misery. And then I saw Mary. She was sitting, curled up into a ball on some flaming table or altar, around about 30 feet from me. Her left side was facing me, and by some miracle, she was completely untouched by the fire around her. She was wearing a lily-white dress, with her knees up, her arms hugging them, and her face buried into them. From the movement of her brown hair and shoulders, I could tell she was crying. I couldn't blame her. Everything about the situation I was in vanished from my mind. And my only thought was to get her, carry her in my arms, and bring her out of this hell. I began to make my way over to Mary, but as my heavy boots made contact with the ground, she somehow heard me from across the room. Slowly, she lifted her head to face me, and the absolute terror of what lay before me stopped me immediately. Her left side of her face was normal enough. Green eyes, red and swollen from crying. Pale cheek, stained with tears. Part of her mouth quivering from a sob. But her right side was a completely blackened skull. And inhuman. Her right eye socket. It wasn't empty, but had a fiery orb, the same color as the fire in the basement. In fact, it seemed like that eye was the source of the fire. As the hellish fire fell like tears from it, her teeth on the right side of her mouth, visible because there was no lip or cheek to cover them, was long and sharp like those of some vicious predator. No hair was left on the right side of her burnt scalp, but protruding from her forehead was a wicked curved horn. The thing that had once been Mary hissed something to me. And through the cacophony of burning wood and stone, through the orchestra of anguish from the dozens of bodies around me, I heard it. Go. You cannot save her, no matter how you try. My foot instinctively took a step backward. But my eyes then focused on Mary's human face, full of pain and torment and despair. I wanted to stay. I wanted to take her out of this place. But something in my very soul held me back. I somehow knew that if any of those infernal flames touched me, my fate would be the same as those that littered the ground around me. So I did as the thing that the devil that was not Mary commanded. I ran away. Out in the hallway, I practically collided into Johnson and Roberts. I told them I hadn't discovered anyone. And together we made our way up and out of the basement. Neither of the other two teams had found anyone, and once we were all outside, our trucks began pumping water to douse the flames. It took longer than any other house fire we'd faced. And right before the final embers inside flickered out, a loud, long groan echoed through the night air. With a crash, the house fell in on itself, which explained the hair-raising sound we'd all heard before the home's destruction. Only I knew the sound wasn't from any structure or thing from this earth. No bodies were found, not even bones. Detective work really isn't my thing, but a buddy of mine from the precinct later told me that a bar that after investigating all the people who the cars belonged to, they'd found some pretty disturbing stuff. Every single one was from somewhere all across the United States. All had one thing in common. Cultists. All of them. When local police investigated their abandoned houses, they all had weird statues, symbols, evidence of grisly sacrifices. All of it littering the place. I guess they all got what they wanted, or at least what they deserved in the end. All of them, except for Mary, I expect. Now, they teach you a lot of things when you train to be a firefighter. But to this day, every time I stare at my right hand, a burned imprint of that clawed, demonic hand forever scarred into my palm. I think about the one thing they don't teach you. What to do in case of hellfire. Behind the house I grew up in, there's a spot in the woods where I used to go hide and look at porn. About a quarter mile in, far enough away that I had privacy, but not so far away that it was a risk of getting lost. It was a stretch of woods in the middle of Kansas City suburbs, surrounded on all sides by neighborhoods and streets full of curious, ignorant kids. I actually found the porn out there, a magazine. I grew up in the 2000s. We had internet. It's not like I couldn't have found it otherwise, but looking at stuff on my home computer could have left a trail, you know? It could have been revealing things about me that it was crucial that my evangelical parents never found out about. I found a Playgirl magazine in the woods. It's a game changer. The first edition I found out there was called Boys of the Rust Belt, working class theme. A lot of generously endowed hunks posing with construction equipment, all of them smiling, all happy to see me, all happy to be seen by me. I was young, and I was hooked. I know all about the dangers of pornography, okay? Let alone gay pornography. We were a focus on family home, abstinence, purity, fear-based theology. But sometimes, sometimes your body overrides your fear. So I started going out in the woods. I found the first magazine next to a creek on top of a concrete drainage pipe. Didn't dare bring it back home. Just left it there, feared that it would be gone the next time. Then I just left it there. Feared it would be gone the next time I went back. And it was. This time there was a new skin mag in its place. And every time I went, there was a different magazine. Straddled the drainage pipe, stare at them, bug-eyed, hunks of the Midwest, surfer dudes, hot uncles, horny truckers, big old bears gone wild. I go out in the woods a couple times every week. Didn't really question the fact that the magazines kept changing. Someone was obviously swapping them out. But then one day, inside the magazine, I found a napkin. Written on it was one word. Hello. I was taken aback, but I assumed it wasn't directed at me, so I just tossed it. Next time I came, there was another note in the magazine. Scrawled on a piece of trash. Inside of a bear label, it said, "I like your brown hair." I ran home, straight out of the woods. I knew there was a lot of brown-haired people out there, but I was the only one in those woods, and I didn't go back for about a month. Until the fear burned off. And I wanted to look at the smiling men again. So I went back. And there was a magazine there, on top of the drain pipe. I was scared to open it. I was scared there'd be a note. But I didn't walk all the way out in the woods just to look at the cover. A piece of cardboard fell out of the centerfold. And on it, in the same shitty handwriting, there was this. There were the words, "Mean no harm. Keep coming back." I looked around. There was nobody there, that could have seen me. But I felt watched. Came back later that week with a pen, new magazine, new note. This time it just said, "Your face looks soft." I wrote back, "Who are you?" Stuffed it back in the magazine. Came back a few days later, and at this point, as interested in the note as the porn. This time it said, "Can I be your friend?" I wrote again, "Tell me who you are." They left. But I didn't go home. Told my mom I'd be spending the night at a friend's house that night. With a courage that I can no longer relate to as an adult, I hid in a tree overlooking the drainage pipe with a flashlight, and I waited. There was lots of sounds at night in the woods. Bugs, owls, deer, a lot of stuff crunching around. I spent a lot of time in the woods. I knew what most of the sounds were. I was waiting for something different, and sure enough, I heard something unusual coming from the drainage pipe. I thought about turning my flashlight on, but my eyes had adjusted enough. It occurred to me that I could probably see the shape of whatever this was, and maybe this was good enough for now. It pulled itself out of the drainage pipe. Long, wet, skinny. A man, but then not quite. The midsection was too long. The arms bent wrong. He wasn't naked, but he wasn't wearing clothes either. An extra large garbage bag was wrapped around him like a toga. He picked up the magazine, opened it, fingered out the note, and read it. But that frightened me. That meant he could see really well at night. If he could read in the dark, then he could see me in this tree, and I needed to stay very quiet. The long man giggled. Then he rubbed the note all over his body, over his arms, his very tall stomach, like it was a sponge. And then he ate it. He sat down, he pulled a small piece of trash out of the bag he wore, a paper label, waved it in the air, then blew on it, a sound that almost whistled. He was drying it out. Then he answered one of the questions that I had. What utensil was he using to write? I couldn't tell. The long man didn't pull out a utensil, no, instead he banged his fist on the top of the drain pipe. 3 times, it echoed like an old church bell. And then he waited. After a few minutes, I heard the sound of something small climbing out of the drain pipe. Little hands clamped onto the upper rim, then pulled the rest of it up. I stopped myself from gasping. It was a boy. A boy in ragged clothes, a boy about as tall as me, who would have been if he stood up straight. The long man pointed at the piece of trash in his hand. He smoothed it out on top of the drain pipe. A little boy, using something that looked like one of my mom's lipstick containers, wrote a response. He showed it to the long man. The long man nodded, pointed a finger back at the drain pipe opening. The little boy held out his hand, and the long man gave him the magazine, the old one. The little boy clutched it to his chest. The long man patted the boy on the top of his head. And the boy scampered back into the pipe like a rat carrying cheese. The long man pulled a new magazine from his bag, set it on the drainage pipe, tucked the new note inside of it, and crawled back inside the pipe as well. As the sounds from the drain faded, I debated whether to go down there to see what the little boy had written this time. I decided to look. I got out of the tree, I turned my flashlight on, I picked up the magazine. Football players hit the showers. I pulled out the note. The note read, "I'm your buddy. More inside pipe. Come look." By the time I got home, I made up my mind to tell my parents. There was a child living in the woods in the drainage pipe with a strange, tall man. But I didn't. When my mom asked why I was so agitated, I lied because I was too scared. Scared that if the police found the boy, they'd find the magazines, and my parents would know why I had been going out there and who I was, so I didn't tell. I moved on. I had to. I started looking at porn online like everyone else. My parents eventually caught me. They cried a lot. A couple years later, after we moved away from the house, had a big flood, really big flood. and a bunch of bones washed down the creek, all belonging to young boys, middle school age. The police had no idea where they'd come from. But the bones all had a few traits in common. The spines were all arched, as if the boys had been in a crawling position for a lengthy period of time. And the other trait was that the bones all had teeth marks on them. Teeth marks that matched the jaw of a human, but not the teeth of a human. And they never found a set of long bones. You know, after a lot of therapy, I learned to manage the anxiety and let go of the shame. I started dating. Met my partner, Jeff, who actually was an adult performer for several years. I've seen his old movies. They're cute. They make me smile. And I'm with Jeff now because I'm alive. And I'm alive in part because 20 years ago I didn't crawl into a drain pipe. And even though I was scared as hell that night, part of me wanted to. It was hard to explain to straight people how starved you can be. I wonder, these days we have smartphones, you know, all those magazines, they've gone out of print. Those things, that thing in the sewer. What is it used now? The clock ticked back and forth above me. It was late in the morning and I fell asleep on my bed watching mindless, late-night cartoons, leaving the TV on in the process. The loud sounds from the early morning shows stirred me awake with sounds of explosion and crazy hijinks. I suddenly found myself looking at the clock. It was already 9 in the morning, and I already knew that our parents weren't home. My mom was working and my dad was out helping a friend move. Thanks to my luck, my dad didn't even ask me to help, which was a good thing for me. Tired from last night's channel surfing, I was hoping for at least one good scary movie or TV show to pop up, but all I found were bland, boring infomercials. I sat in bed for a few minutes, allowing myself to wake up fully before starting a new day. The grating noise of the clock was the only sound that lofted in my room. I gazed around in my room until my eyes hit my bookcase, filled with chilling stories that I read many times and now grew bored of. Slowly I got out of bed and walked towards the bookcase and pulled out one of the books. My eyes glazed down at it as I opened it, flipping through the pages. I sighed and put the book back, knowing what happens in the story. A ghost haunts, and 2 girls escape by defeating the ghoul by exorcising it from the home. Same cliche story. Same cliche ending. All of the books or movies I watched either had the hero or heroine escape and have their happy ending. It is always predictable and quite sad in all honesty. It's one of the reasons why I strive to find new ways to get a good scare. A new horrifying twist would be most pleasing to experience, but nowadays people repeat the same formula in horror, never taking a chance to go beyond the endless cycle. I broke out from my ponderings and then proceeded towards the door to depart from my room. I could make some macaroni and cheese, I thought, craving food after a long night. I made my way to the kitchen. Now I just have to find the box. I instructed myself opening a cabinet filled with canned fruit and other foods inside of boxes like spaghetti, noodles, so on. I slowly leaned in, digging through them. Where is it? And that's when I saw a hand reach in, grabbing a box that was right next to me. I mentally slapped myself and looked to my left to see my little sister Rose. She shook the box in front of my face. "You're as blind as a bat, aren't you, Jasper?" I huffed, grabbing the box from her hands, sitting it on the counter. "When did you come downstairs?" I asked. She watched me. "I've been in the living room," she told me. "Watching television?" I asked. She nodded. "Yeah, SpongeBob was on," Rose told me. Nodding, I lazily responded. "All right, well, since you're here, can you help me?" I asked. "With what?" "With the eggs. Mom taught you how to make them, right?" "Yeah, she did, but I forgot," she told me with a frown. "All right, I'll help you. Get a pan, please," I instructed. She started to search. "Here you go, Jasper. Thanks," I told her. "Now crack them," I continued. "What if I mess up? I did once with Mom and the yolk got all over," she told me. You won't, I promise, I assured her. She looked at me nervously, cracking one egg against the table. Told you, I said. I looked at the box on the side. Okay, stir until soft, I read, stirring clockwise. I felt a tug on my shirt. Rose pointed towards the stove. All right, then you... I started, just to hear my phone's ringtone cut me off. I sighed, looking over at the macaroni again and towards my phone. 1 second. Stir the macaroni for me, please, I frowned. Is it Mary? She asked. Most likely. Okay, but you'll keep an eye out for the eggs, right? She asked. I nodded, going towards my phone. I looked at the caller ID. Yep, it's Mary, I replied, answering it. I waited for a few seconds to hear rustling in the background of her phone. Mary? I asked. Jasper? The teen shouted back. I pulled the phone away from my face a bit. Her voice was ear-shattering. Whoa! Excited much? I laughed a bit. Laughter came out of Mary's mouth. I found something amazing, really freaking cool online, she continued. My eyes lit up with interest. Really? Well, if it's a story about the ghost, I already... No, it's not a dumb story. I actually read up on our state. It's an article, she told me. I felt my interest float away, and I flipped the eggs again. You have to be kidding. What article did you find? The one where the farmer gets his leg cut off by his farming equipment? I asked. No, Jasper. I swear, this is actually interesting, she shouted, getting aggravated, wanting to tell me. I stopped for a second. All right, but I bet I've read it before, I replied, looking at Rose, who stared, her eyes filled with curiosity. I heard Mary let out an annoyed groan. Great. Now I can't. Mom's asking me to tend the garden and stuff, she mumbled harshly. Okay, tell me later. I'm going to have to. Be sure to have your laptop out. All right, bye, I finished. I heard her mom shouting from her room, and she groaned again. Bye, she told me, hanging up. I moved the phone away from my ear, placing it in my pocket. Rose started to stir the macaroni again. I looked into the pot, noticing the macaroni was soft. All right, good job, I told her. I lifted the pot and poured the water out into the sink. What was she talking about, Jasper? Rose asked suddenly. I shrugged. She didn't exactly get to the point, I replied, hearing Rose turn off the oven. I'm sure it's interesting, she told me. I brought the pot back to the stove, staying silent. Maybe, I responded. We went silent for a few seconds. All right, get the cheese, I said, changing the subject. She grinned widely. I couldn't help but feel somewhat curious in what Mary was going to say. It's been a long time since I actually heard her so hyped up about something. Maybe it was something I never read before. Later during the evening, I was back in my room, my phone next to me. I had my eyes glued to the laptop screen, staring at the search bar. Finally, to my relief, my phone started to vibrate. My eyes snapped away from my laptop, and my hands quickly scrambled towards the device, answering the call. Hello? I asked. Some exhausted pants were heard, and it ended with the sound of a door slamming. Hey, Mary, I started just for her to interrupt. Sorry about not calling earlier. I sort of had to help Mom out with a few other things, she told me. I heard rustling on her line, and she let out a tired groan. So happy to be in my bed, she continued. I put her on speakerphone and placed the phone next to me. I bet. Now, what did you want to show me? My curiosity spoke for me. There was a few seconds of a pause. I knew that you were interested, she laughed. I had to admit, I did sound as if I truly didn't care during the last call. Yeah, I am. I mean, mainly because you've never sounded so hyped for something before, I responded. Well, duh. It's an awesome thing. All right, search up West Virginia abandoned places, she told me. My fingers immediately went towards the keys, typing it all in quickly. Did you type it in? She asked. Yeah. Which link? I asked, seeing multiple links. The first one, she replied, her voice filled with excitement. I brought the mouse towards the link, clicking on it, and soon enough I was brought to a website. It had a bland red and gray background with text, even pictures, some of a little boy with an older man. What is this? I asked Mary. I heard her clicking as if going onto the website herself. This is Gran's magic show. I started to scroll down to view some of the text under each picture. I stopped at the first picture, the one of the building. It had a large sign next to it, and people were walking inside. Each of them had old hairstyles and happy expressions. Gran's magic show. Yeah, this is what I wanted to show you. Go ahead and read the text, she told me. I blinked, starting to read. Gran's Magic Show, 1964, Main Road, West Virginia. This was the building in which the events took place. The building was decorated with beautiful red curtains, wooden flooring, each board polished to shine brightly with cement underneath. Wonderful gray walls painted with vibrant red circles. The building was huge, like a giant hotel, with a large decorated stage for the magician himself in the upstairs area. I read out loud. That was back in 1964, I said, rubbing my chin. I heard a hum from Mary. Exactly. This is interesting, I replied, scrolling down towards the next picture of the child and the older man. Grand and his boss, Lewis, 1965. Grand, age 12, was very talented in magic for his age and was hired by Lewis in 1963. It was given the alias Papa Grand as a stage name. Grand was a rather tempered child who normally stuck next to Lewis until 1993 when he passed away. A new boss was hired later on, I read. I have to laugh at the nickname though, she snorted. I tapped my finger on my laptop. Yeah. But still, what's your point? I asked her. Just read on, okay? Next picture should give you a hint, she replied. I tilted an eyebrow, scrolling down to find a picture of people running out, fear written on their faces as they ran out of the doors. 1993, Grand's last magic show. People ran in fear of the events which happened inside. This picture was captured during the event. The building is now fenced in, I continued. Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. The building is about to be explored, she told me. I stared in thought. Jasper? Oh, sorry. I was just thinking. How did you find this? I asked. Like I said, I was searching up abandoned places that was in the state. So I sort of dug into the old links and found the link to this website. No, aren't you going to thank me? Thank you for what? For finding something for us to do, she replied. I stopped. Who said I wanted to do this? I mean, sure, it's interesting, but Jasper, you're so lazy. Main Road is a good 10-minute walk, or are you just scared? She teased. I thought for a moment. Fine. What time? I asked. She let out a cheer of victory. Yes! 2 p.m. tomorrow. I'll be at your house then, she told me. I picked up my phone. Okay. See you then. Bye, she said, hanging up. I moved my phone away from my ear and hung up, placing it on my desk. I went silent looking at that last picture on the website. I closed the lid of my laptop. I did feel rather curious. Seconds later, I heard a car door slam and Rose ran out of her room. Going down the stairs. Mom must be home. I slowly got out of my bed, making my way out of my room. Downstairs, I heard my mom yawn loudly, closing the front door. Mom! Rose shouted cheerfully. I walked down the stairs and saw her. She removed her jacket and placed it on a chair. Hey, sweetie, she grinned, messing up her hair. She looked slightly dark under the eyes, more likely tired. Mom, you're home, I said, walking up to her. She nodded. Yeah, the office is making me work a little later than normal, she replied. I see. She reached into her purse, pulling out her phone. Speaking of later than normal, your father texted me saying that he'll be home about 6 tomorrow. He still has a ton of things to do over there. In the meantime, what have you both been doing? She asked, walking into the nearby bathroom. I pulled out a kitchen chair and sat down, Rose by the door. We made macaroni and cheese. I just watched cartoons for a while, and then I decided to go upstairs to my room, Rose told her. Is that all you ate? Mom replied. I leaned on my armboard. No, I've been snacking. Jasper ate a few small things, but nothing big, because he's talking to Mary and was doing chores, Rose said. Oh, and what were you and Mary talking about, Jasper? She asked. I started to tap my fingers on the table. Well, she's coming over tomorrow and stuff. Talked about, abandoned places and such, the usual. I responded. She is. What time? About 2. We're going to go to a few places, and then we're going to come back home. I see. Well, take Rose with you. I don't feel as if she's safe alone, she told me. I froze. Whoa. Wait, what? Take Rose with me? I shouted. Rose frowned a bit. Is there a problem with that, Jasper? She asked. Yeah, I thought tomorrow was your day off. It's only supposed to be Mary and I. The bathroom door opened and Mom walked out, her face clear of makeup. Well, I have to work tomorrow because someone else is sick. so I have to take her place for the day, she replied. Rose crossed her arms. Mom, No, Jasper, don't argue. Take her with you. Fine, I said in defeat. My mom was rather paranoid with my little sister. She can't be anywhere alone. Made me feel like the babysitter. Before I knew it, it was 11. I was once again in my bed, reading through the same website once again. I wanted to find out more about him. I bit my lip, clicking on more images. And of course, dozens popped up. One of Grand back in 1965. From the looks of it, he had cut an actress in half. Of course, when it comes to magic, the actresses and actors always had a way to be safe during it all. I clicked on another picture. It was an old map of the building's location. It had Main Road going around it. Okay, so it's by Main Road at least, but in that exact location now, it's nothing but a forest. Wonder if it's still standing. I rubbed my chin, reaching over to grab my phone. I went to my text and started to message Mary. Mary, do you even know if it's still standing? Sent. While I waited, I continued to click picture after picture until I stopped, seeing an image of Gran back in the 90s. Unlike most of the pictures of him as a kid, in this picture, he just looked depressed. Like all that happiness just vanished. I heard my phone vibrate and I looked at the message. Yeah, it's still standing, but I bet it's damaged and such. So, are you ready for tomorrow? I started to message back. Oh, I just saw an old map of the location. It's surrounded by the forest now, right? Oh, and ... Rose is going with us. Sent. Yeah, be ready for a small hike through the forest. What? Why is she coming along? I mean, it's not a big deal, but still. I know my mom is forcing me. She's too worried about leaving her alone. Sent. All right, I understand. See you then. I'm going to bed. Night. Night. Sent. I finished texting her, placing my phone back onto my desk. I pushed the power button on my laptop, shutting it off. My eyelids started to droop, and everything eventually became black. The next day pretty much consisted of making breakfast, doing the chores I needed to do, and finally, I went into my room and grabbed everything I possibly needed. I gently placed things that I might need into my backpack. Alright, something to snack on, some water, flashlight. This should be good. I checked over everything I had. Now, we just have to wait for Mary. I huffed, getting up from my position. I bent over to grab my phone, sliding it into my pocket. Silently, I made my way out of my room, sliding the bag over one of my shoulders. Rose was downstairs. She had grabbed her jacket and slipped it on. I walked towards her and pulled out my phone. Where are you? I texted, hoping Mary would reply fast. I'm down the street, she replied seconds later. All right, we're ready and such. I also packed a bag for us as well. Sent. Great. I'll be there in just a few minutes. Okay, sent. We messaged. I slid my phone back in my pocket and looked at the door. Hey, Jasper, Rose said. What? Where are we going? We're just gonna go check out something. It'll be fun, I replied, tapping my foot impatiently. She went silent. Eventually, Mary arrived. She knocked on the door and I allowed her inside. Okay, let's get out of here, she said quickly. I walked out of the house. Rose followed behind, closing the door slowly. First of all, what did you pack for us? Some food, water, flashlight. Awesome. Sounds about good. Now, aren't you excited? I'm very curious. Close enough. What about you, Rose? Mary asked. Rose lifted an eyebrow. I don't even know where we're going, she replied. Mary gave me a look as we started to walk. Well, it's going to be cool. You like abandoned things, Rose? She asked. Rose shrugged and went into the middle of us. Kinda. I mean, it's okay. I don't like ghosts, and most abandoned places have ghosts, right? Nah, not exactly. Where we're going, we're only going to be there for an hour or so. Oh, they said. We all pretty much talked until we arrived at Main Road. I looked at the tall trees that towered over us. Mary took a deep breath, taking a few steps into the brush of nature in front of her. If I remember, we should keep going forward, and we should run into a fence, Mary mumbled. And climb it? Rose asked. I nodded. Most likely, but who knows? I mean, it might actually be torn down from the elements, or Either way, we'll get in. Yeah, because I didn't walk all this way for nothing. Really? You're complaining about walking for 10 minutes? Mary snickered. I growled in annoyance, looking down. I wasn't complaining. I was just... Bye. Mary's voice sounded far away. I looked up to see her walk deeper, farther from me. Rose followed close behind her. I raised my arms in the air. What the heck? I shouted. I heard her laugh. Come on, Jasper! I groaned, stepping into the brush of weeds and other plant life, some of which reached up to my knees. I struggled to run in there, thanks to it being rather thick. Yeah, well, thanks for leaving me behind, I said sarcastically when I caught up to them. Then you should have kept up with me, she laughed. What? I just looked down for a second. Still, should have kept up. I felt a little annoyed. Minute after minute passed. I groaned, bringing my hand up to my bag, taking it off my shoulder slowly. Mary and Rose stopped after hearing me place it on the rock. Water break? She asked. I nodded, taking a large container out. Hey, remember to save some for us, Mary frowned. I swallowed the little amount of water that I had in my mouth, closing the lid. I know, I said, holding it out. She quickly grasped it on her fingers. So how much further? I questioned. Mary wiped her mouth, handing the container towards Rose, looking around. We should be close by now, she responded. I felt a sort of cheer go through my body. I reached over, grabbing the container from Rose, who held it out. I gently placed the container back in my bag, placing it back over my shoulder. We have to keep moving, she said, starting to walk once again. Rose looked at me. My legs are sore, Jasper, she told me. I started to walk once again. I know how you feel, I responded. Wow, you can tell that you're both siblings, she teased. I rolled my eyes, and soon enough, Mary stopped. And her eyes lit up. I tilted my head and looked at her. Mary? Do you see it? She asked. See what? I asked. She pointed towards the front of us. I looked. And to my surprise, there was a fence. We made it! We finally made it! She shouted, running towards the fence fast, ignoring the multiple weeds around us. Rose and I looked at each other and started running ourselves. And then we were in front of the fence. The fence appeared to look like a bush. The plant life covered it like a blanket. From the looks of it, it was rather complicated to climb. Mary walked up to it, observing. Dang, Rose said, getting close up. Mary put her hand on the vegetation. This might be difficult, she told us. Yeah, so who's going first? I'll go last, I said, looking at them both. Mary looked at Rose. I think I should go up first, then Rose can go, she told us. All right, be careful, I told her. She nodded and gripped the fence tight. Each time she climbed, I expected her to lose her footing. I stayed behind her just in case. God, it's harder to climb than I thought, she said, lifting her hand up to grab a hold of the vegetation and the fence underneath. Almost there, she shouted, moving her foot up over the plant life, trying to feel the fence through it. Jasper, I'm sort of scared to climb this, Rose whispered. I looked down at her and gave her an assuring smile. Hey, I'll be right behind you. I'll catch you if you fall. Mary will be on the other side too, I assured. Rose sighed shakily and looked up to see Mary going down the other side of the fence. I heard her grunt as she dropped to the ground. All right, Rose's turn, Mary shouted from the other end. I looked over at Rose, who grew a tough posture. I can do this, she said, starting to climb the fence slowly. I stayed behind her. I could hear her inhaling air deeply, trying to stay calm and balanced. She reached up to grasp the vegetation, just for her foot to slip. She let out a scream of fear, and I quickly caught her in my arms. She shook, terrified. Well, is she okay? Mary shouted from the other side, hearing the scream. I looked at her and rubbed her back. Breathe. It's okay. Almost made it. I tried to calm her. Jasper, she started. Is everything okay? Mary asked again. Everything's fine. She just lost her grip, I replied. Is she okay? Yeah, it scared her though. All right, well, try to hurry. You have to see this. I looked at her when she was finally calmed down. Ready to try again? I asked her. She looked down. Yeah, but can you help? She asked. I nodded. Of course. I picked her up with a grunt, lifted her high so she could have less to climb. There, you have a good grip now, right? I asked. She nodded, starting to climb up slower. could feel a sense of relief when she finally went over the top, going to the other end where Mary stood, waiting for her. "Did you make it?" I asked. "Yeah, your turn, Jasper." I raised my hands, clutching the fence tight. Moving up slowly, one foot after another, I gripped the top, and soon enough, I made it over the old fence. My feet hit the solid ground and I turned around. Rose and Mary were staring at the very old building. My eyes widened at its appearance. The paint that was on the outside was chipped immensely, revealing the brown bricks underneath. Vines, much like the fence, had taken over most of the building. The windows were boarded up, the windows above too high for us to get to. They were busted out, and Mary's grin widened along with my own. This was an amazing sight. "Come on! We have to find a way inside," Mary said, her voice cheery. I walked over and nodded. "I'll go check the back. Jasper, Rose and yourself, you should check around the sides of the building," she instructed. I groaned. "Who made you the leader?" I asked. She pushed me gently. "I'm the one that found out about this place," she said teasingly. Rose giggled. "Fine," I told her. She grew a slight smirk, and she started walking towards the back of the building. I looked down at Rose. "Left or right side?" Rose asked. I shrugged. "Let's just check the left," I replied, going in that direction. As we went around the building, twigs snapped under our feet. The breeze that once blew the trees had vanished, making everything a little quieter. I got close to the side of the building, looking at each window. I rose my hand up to a board on one, pushing it. Didn't even budge. If anything, it felt as if there were more boards on the other side of it. Rose walked over towards the one next to it, getting the exact same thing. They have to be boarded up on the other side too," I told her. She nodded. "The right side now?" Rose asked. I nodded. "I doubt we'll find anything different," I replied, going around the corner towards the back once again. I went towards the right side, and Rose followed quickly behind. Much like the left side, the windows were boarded up. I made my way slowly over to them, reaching up to push like I had on the left, and just get the exact same response. I growled. "My God, please don't make this trip for nothing," I groaned, going towards the front just to hear a noise followed by a cheerful cry. "Mary?" I asked, going around the corner just to see her climbing up through a window. My eyes widened in shock. I walked over. "How did you—" "It was loose," Mary replied. "Loose? But the others were just fine?" "No, boarded up from the other side too, I think. But this one had only one side boarded up, and it made it loose," she told me. "What?" "Either way, we have an in." She smiled, going inside. Rose climbed through next. I climbed in last. My feet slowly touched the wooden flooring, and I looked around. The room that we were in had a bed. Its sheets were tattered, and the room was an ungodly mess. The floor had to have had layers of dust along with the objects inside. The walls were chipping, much like the exterior of the building. "Whoa," I said in awe. Mary squealed happily. "This is so amazing," she said, going towards an old desk. I could feel my eyes traveling over every object in the room. Slowly I walked towards the closet, which was next to the bed. I tried my best to avoid the multiple objects that were strewn around my path, mainly the bed sheets, which could have easily tripped me up with one wrong step. "Did you find something, Jasper?" Rose asked, going next to me. I gripped the closet door, pulling it open slowly because it was old. "Maybe," I replied, opening it fully. Inside the closet were dusty old shoes, along with coat hangers and some old, ruined shirts at the very bottom. "Hey, Mary, come look at this," I said. She turned around and placed a small vase back on the desk, walking over. "This is cool," she said, picking up an old shirt from the bottom. Suddenly my mind clicked. "I wonder if this was a guest room," I asked. "I think it is, Jasper," Mary replied. I heard a noise from behind me and I turned. Rose had opened the door and started to leave the room. Mary put the shirt down and I walked towards Rose. "Where are you going?" I asked. Mary walked towards us, going beside me. "I don't think there's anything else to view in here, Jasper," Mary told me. Rose nodded. I had to agree. The room only had tattered bed sheets, a desk with no drawers, and a closet with old shoes and shirts. I peered out the door to see a long hallway with multiple doors. It was dark. Very dark. All right, 1 second, I told them, placing the backpack on the ground, opening it just to pull out the flashlight. Thank God you grabbed that, Mary said. I pushed the small button on the side, turning it on just for the light to illuminate the hallway. I stepped out. Mary and Rose followed close behind.
I could feel the curiosity course through me. The multiple doors seemed to hypnotize me, along with the paintings on the wall. I stopped at the first door, causing Jasper to shine the light my way. "What are you doing?" he asked. I twisted the knob and pushed on the door. It opened, and I smiled with excitement. "She's so into this," I heard Rose mumble. "And you both aren't?" I asked. "I'm interested," Jasper responded. "I think it's different," Rose replied. "Exactly." I turned back to the room. Jasper's light shined against the boarded-up window and over multiple objects. I heard their footsteps follow me in as I went further into the room. "Mary, check this out," I heard Jasper say. The light went off of the wall, and Jasper had it shining towards a large picture above us. "Keep it there," I told him, slowly reaching up to take it off the wall. My fingers grasped the picture's frame, slowly lifting the picture away from the wall. I moved my hand towards the photo, wiping all the dust away to reveal a photo of the building. "It's just the photo on the day of its opening, maybe, like the one we saw on the website," I told them. "It's something, I guess." I hummed in agreement. The light slowly moved away from the picture as Jasper turned to look around. "This room is so empty. The closet doesn't even have clothes or hangers inside," he said, pointing the light towards the open closet. I shrugged. "Maybe we should go upstairs now so, then we can go see the stage or whatever," Jasper asked. "I want to check the rest of the rooms first," I replied. "Okay, lead the way, leader," Jasper mumbled, holding the light out towards me. I took it in my fingers, making my way out of the room. Just like the last few rooms, there was absolutely nothing. All the rooms were the same. The only things I could find were clothes and the same type of photos. I went out of the last room and started to walk towards the right. "We saw all of the rooms down there," Jasper said. "Yeah, we can go upstairs now." I moved the flashlight, trying to find the stairs. "Wherever the stairs are," Rose said. I continued to walk forward just to see two hallways. One went left, the other went right. And I thought for a moment, and I heard Jasper groan loudly. "Oh, are you kidding me?" he said miserably. "Stop being a baby," I said quietly. I heard Rose giggle in response. Jasper mumbled under his breath. I could tell that it made him slightly angry. "I'm not a baby." "Never mind. So, which way do we go?" Jasper asked. I shined the flashlight towards the right. The hallway appeared to end with a wall. Old pots were in the corners, sitting there. I shined it towards the left, and it seemed to continue on. I slowly started to walk towards the left. The flashlight gripped tight in my hands. I remained silent, hitting the end of the hallway. There was a door. Only one at the very end. Above the door was a small, slightly damaged sign that read, "Stairs." It was rusty around the hinges. Rose turned the handle, and the door refused to open fully. I growled, grabbing the handle just to yank hard, making it open with a loud squeak. The bottom of the door was decayed and broken a few places from getting dragged across the wooden floor. I shined the light against the wall. In the middle of the room were the stairs. There were no windows, to my surprise. I walked in just to hear something break under my foot. I kept going ahead just to hear the sound more and more. I shined the light on the floor. Small pieces of glass reflected the light back at me. "Glass?" I asked. Jasper laughed, raising his hands. "Spooky," he said in a teasing tone. I rolled my eyes and started to make my way up the stairs, avoiding the glass shards the best I could.
I couldn't help but stay close behind Jasper when we continued up the stairs. Each step up the stairs felt as if I was going to fall through. They creaked and creaked until finally, we managed to reach the top floor. Mary shined the light towards the door to the next room. Next to it was a large, broken, rectangular tank. "At least we know where the glass came from," Mary said quietly, looking over the railing to look straight down. Jasper hummed in agreement. Mary brought her hand up, opening the door just to enter another hallway. The windows had actually allowed some light in. I heard the click of the flashlight, seeing the light that once came out of it vanish. The website wasn't lying when they said it was a huge building. Mary turned off the flashlight. Honestly, I was just happy I could see again. Mary quickly unzipped Jasper's backpack, shoving the flashlight inside. "We don't need this for now," Mary hummed, starting to walk. My face sorta crunched up when I walked with them. This area reeked.
I could imagine in my mind what the area looked like years ago, with the multiple civilians walking around in the nice windows. It was so strange. What could have possibly happened in this place? I stared at the ground in deep thought as I walked. "Jasper?" Mary said, nudging me softly. I snapped out of my daze and looked ahead of us. Through a doorway was a stage. I could feel the feelings I craved once again as we walked closer. It was very cool inside the stage area. All around it, scattered around were the chairs. The once red color in the curtains seemed to have vanished into a pinkish color with splotches of brown. "It looks," I started. "Awesome," Mary finished. I nodded. "Yeah. Hey, I'm gonna get a better look," I told her, stepping over a chair which was in front of me. I wanted to see the backstage area. I really, really wanted to. I went towards the steps, lifting my foot up to step on the first one.
I separated from Jasper and Mary. I didn't want to bother them, so I went across to a broken window, trying to get some fresh air at least. The smell of the place didn't seem to bother Mary and Jasper, since they haven't even mentioned anything. The rotting wood just made the whole place smell like decay. Up here was the worst, or at least to me. My eyes traveled down towards the ground below. I inhaled and exhaled, suddenly seeing a shadow of something in the corner of my eye. "Oh shit," I heard, followed by a loud snap. The shadow seemed to move, and I jumped slightly, turning my head to see Jasper. He yanked his foot out of the step, cursing loudly. He had some scratches around his ankle. Mary rushed over towards him, and I turned to look again. Now the shadow was gone. "Jasper, what the hell?" Mary shouted. I turned towards them. "Sorry." "You're so lucky that this didn't hurt you bad," Mary groaned. My heart began to beat faster. "Guys, can we leave?" I asked, starting to get worried. "I want to check something first. I saw another door. It might lead to the backstage," Jasper pointed. But before I could continue, he had climbed on the stage, limping a bit on his foot. "I'll be fine, Rose. The pain will go away soon," he assured, not realizing. Mary rolled her eyes and climbed onto the stage herself. I quickly followed. I didn't feel safe alone in the area. I knew that Jasper wasn't terribly injured. It probably would be pretty bruised later, though. I moved a piece of the torn and dusty curtain as soon as I climbed up. Jasper had his hand on the handle of a tall door. "All right, let's see this, and then we will leave." Jasper went to turn the handle just for it not to turn all the way. "What?" he questioned, trying again. "It's locked," Jasper groaned. "Then we can go," I said quickly, sliding off the stage. "I guess," Jasper mumbled. "I wanted to see the backstage area," he continued. I didn't care. I just felt paranoid now.
I slowly closed the door behind us as we left the stage area. My foot throbbed a little, and I was slightly upset. I had my interest built in, and it was torn down. I heard the bag unzip, and Mary turned on the flashlight. "All right. Guess we have nowhere else to go but home. You win, Rose," Mary sighed. Once again, we started to make our way down into the darkness. It surrounded us in its arms. Rose didn't reply. She was just silent. "Rose, I'm sorry if I sounded rude there," Mary apologized. Yet again, she didn't reply. Rose! I shouted. It's okay, she spoke shakily. I knew something was off with her once again. I heard the glass, and Rose screamed a little in fear. I could hear her dart up the stairs quickly, but what was up with her? Rose, it was just the glass, remember? I said, worried. I heard her soft sobs, and Mary shined the flashlight towards her. She was curled up against the wall. Hey, stay here for a moment, I told Mary. Oh, duh. Mary frowned. I made my way towards Rose, who looked at me, fear in her eyes. I'm scared, she said. Hey, there's no reason to be, I assured, putting my hand on her head. She shook under my touch and sniffled. Come on, we're going home. I smiled, holding my hand up towards her. She slowly reached towards my hand, and I helped her up.
Jasper gave me a pat, putting on a happy attitude as he returned next to me. Let's go. She's a little better now, he said. I looked down at Rose and exhaled. I'm sorry about this, guys, I said. Hey, it's okay. We had a great time. Rose just got a little scared. That's all, he assured. I shook my head and he gently grasped my shoulder. Listen, we're okay. Let's go, he said, very serious. I smiled a bit. All right, I said, and we all left, walking out of the area.
As we continued on our way, I made sure to look down at Rose just to check on her. We're almost there, I told her, the turn coming up. Mary stopped walking for a second and got a look on her face, a serious one. Hey, Mary, what are you... Shh! She shushed me. I frowned. Shut up and listen, she whispered. I went silent and Rose went closer to me. And that's when I heard it. A walking sound. Each footstep sounded closer and closer. I felt Rose grip hold of my shirt tight. I remained silent. My heart started to pound faster the closer it came until a gray, gloved hand grabbed the corner of the wall. You three came to work awfully late. We have to get the show started, a man's voice asked.
I felt my mouth go dry and my legs started to get in running position. Work? Rose asked. We both started to walk towards the door. The male walked slowly into view. He had long, white hair, which reached down to his upper back. He had makeup on his face and dark rings under his eyes, which were bloodshot and had a mean feeling to it. What really caught my attention was the small blade which he had grasped in his hand. My, yes, you are my actor and actresses, of course. You busted in here just to perform, he chuckled, getting closer. Wait, hey, I think you got the wrong group, Jasper said. His hand slowly reached into his pocket, and I could see his phone. Rose let out a cry of fear and sprinted away, triggering the male to sprint at us, the dagger in his hand tight. I screamed, dropping the flashlight from fear. We need to go, Jasper shouted, turning to run. No way this was happening. My legs went numb. Don't run from your boss, he hissed. I felt a hand grip mine, and Jasper sprinted with me into the room with the staircase. Rose quickly backed away from the door. What is wrong with this guy? Jasper asked, shutting the door tight, holding it in place. This is very rude. Open this fucking door, he growled. I could hear the man on the other side, ramming it. Jasper put his back against the door, forcing it shut. Get something to help me, Jasper said, his teeth together. He was using all of his strength to keep it closed. I looked around fast. All I could see was black. I can't see anything, I shouted. Did you drop the flashlight? I didn't mean to. Then you are all very late. The male's voice sounded enraged from behind the door, and he started to force the door open.
I felt tired. Very tired. This man is going to kill us if I stayed like this. I quickly tried to grab my phone out of my pocket. I felt nothing inside and I gasped. Shit, I cursed. What's wrong? I think I dropped my phone. Are you serious? Jasper! Shut up and run! What? I said shut up and run! I screamed. I heard Rose quickly sprint up the stairs. She quickly pressed her own back against the door. Mary, are you stupid? Not as stupid as you. You can't take this guy. God damn it. I don't want you getting hurt, I shouted, pushing her away. I could hear the glass under her feet and thought for a moment, I have an idea. I could hold it only for a few more seconds, I screamed. If I could just manage to trip him up, it would work. Jasper, I swear to, I won't say it again. I stopped her right there. I heard her go silent and then I heard running. I took a deep breath. And quickly, I moved away from the door. He burst in, a dagger high. I could see the glass under my feet. We both got slammed into the steps. I screamed. The man was right above me, my hands clasped around the dagger, holding it away from my heart. You ignorant brat. I give you one job, and this is how you treat me, he shouted. He was nuts. He was really fucking nuts. I no longer wanted the feeling of paranoia and fear. His eyes were filled with a great amount of intensity. His grin was large and twisted. Get off of me, I shouted, kicking the older man in the ribs. He gripped his chest and tripped on the first 4 steps, causing the dagger to get thrown out the door. He landed directly on the small pile of glass. He screamed in pain, clutching his face, and I quickly tried to get up. Mary had the door held open upstairs. My God, what did you do? Mary asked, shocked. Doesn't matter. Shut the damn door. I ran through it. Mary slammed the door shut. I quickly ran to grab a chair, putting it against the door. Where's Rose? I asked. Mary breathed quickly. She's behind the curtain, she said, walking beside me fast. I looked around at the curtains hanging above the window. Curled into a ball was Rose. She was crying, loudly. Oh my God. I felt terrible. How are we going to escape? Mary asked. I turned with anger. It'd be nice if you shut up. I mean, damn it, Mary, you just had to come here. This isn't some damn movie or an article. This is real life. We have no escape, none. The windows are too freaking high for us to escape from. He's downstairs, which means our exit's blocked, so in other words, we're gonna die, I shouted angrily. She gasped and her eyes started to water before she pushed me. Jackass, you're the one who wanted to come with. Well, you're the one who found the website, so will you both shut up? Rose cried, tears running down her face. Mary's angry face suddenly turned to fear. I snapped out of my angry daze once I heard footsteps. Oh God, he's up, I thought. Mary hissed angrily, walking towards a broken window. I just told you, the windows are too high. I rubbed Rose's back. Well, guess what? Maybe he'll kill you first if I do this, she cried. My eyes widened, and I bolted up, walking towards her. Mary, don't tell me to calm down, Jasper, she cut me off. I knew that I had pissed her off. I knew that it was a bad time to do so. Look, I'm sorry, I shouted. She shook her head. It's me. Me, remember? Remember, Jasper? She shouted, going through the window onto the roof. I looked back and Rose ran back over, hearing the chair slide away. I shook my head. But screw it, I shouted, picking up Rose. Quickly, I scrambled through the window, standing on the gray tiling. A few feet away, Mary sat, glaring at me. Mary, leave me alone! Don't follow me, she growled. Rose gripped hold of me tight, and I slowly made my way towards Mary. I knew I'd screwed up. We all did. I heard the door slam open again, and we all went stiff. I could hear his angry mumbles and his footsteps through the room. Rose started to hiccup from crying. I covered her mouth, and my jaw was locked. Mary slowly made her way around the roof, just for her foot to slip, causing her to slide a bit. She screamed in a high pitch, catching his attention from inside. I felt sweat trickling down my face. You can't do a disappearing act on me, I heard before a hand wrapped around one of my ankles, causing me to fall and drop Rose. Jasper! Rose screamed. I reached my hand out, trying to catch her, just for it to fail. Rose, no! Mary screamed, leaning in to grab her. It was too late. I watched in horror as my little sister grasped one little piece of siding before her eyes widened, and then 1 second, the tile snapped and all we could hear was the sound of her body hitting the ground below. And then there was nothing. Nothing but silence. My eyes remained wide, and the world seemed to stop. My mouth went agape, my whole body went numb, head to toe. Do you hear her? I could have sworn she was levitating. He laughed. My head slowly turned towards him. If I could feel any more fear than this, I would have. He had blood running down his face. His eyes were huge and insane. His nails dug into my hurting ankle, causing me to scream one last time until he yanked me inside, forcing me to the ground. He picked up one of the chairs. I could only lay there. I was in a sense of shock.
My legs were like noodles. Sweat drenched me as I stood, shaking. Rose's body was on the cement below. Her legs were twisted in strange angles, and below her, some blood had started to puddle under her. It was horrible. And now Jasper... I couldn't sit back and do nothing, even if he did piss me off. I took a deep breath and quickly took off into the room. Right when he was going to slam the chair down, I gripped it, trying to take it away from him. "Jasper, run!" I shouted. Jasper just laid there, motionless. "Let go, you little..." he hissed, grabbing me by my hair, yanking me with force. I hit the wooden floor with a loud thump. "Everyone gets a little stage fright. Let me help you both," he said, lifting the chair. I felt massive pain in my head, and I blacked out.
Tears slowly went down my cheeks as Mary was knocked cold by the chair. He turned slowly. "You know what? I think you're very special. I might make you perform with me first." He smiled at the last part. I stared at the chair until it hit me hard in the head. My eyes slowly opened after who knows how long. Everything around me was a blur, unable to be viewed correctly, as if it was a fog. A low groan escaped from my mouth as the smell of rot went into my nostrils. I blinked a few times, my vision starting to slowly clear, revealing the multiple objects around me. I gasped. All around me were boxes. It wasn't the boxes that scared me, it was the contents within them. Human carcasses, each pointed directly my way. Some had maggots slowly eating off of them. I tried to move, but to no success, and then I noticed I was inside of something. A box of my own. Suddenly, the memories of the events which happened before went deep into my mind, tearing at my brain. This was all actually happening. My head throbbed. "Jasper?" I heard a groan. I tried to look over the box. It was Mary's voice. "Mary? Mary, Oh, I hear that you're both awake," a voice said. I started to kick the inside of the box and it didn't budge. "Where are you?" I shouted. I heard a loud laugh and Mary let out a scream. "No! Don't touch me!" she shouted. My. "Don't you want the audience to see you better?" he asked. I couldn't even see what they were doing.
I was upright in a box. My eyes followed the man's as he turned me. When he did, human carcasses made me scream. "Look at them. They want to see you shine." He walked towards Jasper, turning the rectangular box towards me. But they're dead," Jasper shouted, thrashing around. "No, they're not. They're just silently waiting. Now, allow me to introduce myself," he said, walking in front of us, looking at the audience. "Hello, my wonderful guests. It is I, Papa Grande Magico," he announced. My eyes widened. It all made sense now. He killed people. That's why this place was abandoned. "Grand? You're the reason why this place is abandoned?" Jasper asked. Grand laughed, clutching his head. No, it's their fault. I performed so greatly. They tried to fire me, take away what I loved. I tried to make them proud for years. My boss volunteered himself. He stuttered before grinning wide. "Now, why don't you shut your trap? It's rude to speak when I'm doing my introduction." Grand snapped. Jasper flinched, and I shook. He cleared his throat and started speaking once again. "Now the great Papa Grand has a new actor and actress who had come to be right here with me. This will be a great show. We have things to show." His eyes snapped towards Jasper. "This one will be the first to be shown." He finished. He laughed to himself. "That's so great to hold your excitement till the end," he continued, talking to the carcasses as if they were living. I felt my heart throb faster and faster as he walked towards the side of the room. There on the wall, was a large hacksaw. It had rust all over it, and when he removed it from the wall, it hit the ground with a ping. "I know, it's been a long time since I performed for you all," he kept talking as he walked towards Jasper's blind side. "So, welcome to the show." He laughed, placing the hacksaw in the very middle of the box. Mary, what is he doing?" "Shh, it's even worse to speak during the performance," Grand said, starting to saw. I watched as wood shavings slowly fell to the ground as he kept cutting. "Let him go, please! Oh God, please!" I screamed.
I heard it. I heard the sound. I finally realized what he was doing. "I'm not a part of your magic show!" I screamed. He laughed loudly, starting to saw faster. Mary's begging continued to get louder. "You stupid shit. You volunteered yourself. The both of you!" he shouted. Suddenly pain coursed through my body. I could feel the sharp points of the saw rip into my skin like knives. Each movement he made started to go deeper. "Let him go! Let him go, please! This isn't what magic's supposed to be!" Mary screamed. With one quick movement, I could feel my organs getting shredded inside of me. As I screamed, I could feel blood running out of my mouth quickly, and the pain, it killed me. I coughed, some blood landing on the wooden floor that was under me. Gran started to mock my screams. Well, I can't even do one act. How? I choked out, breathing becoming impossible. I wanted to die. I just wanted to die already, just so the pain could go away.
My eyes were swollen from my tears as Jasper struggled to speak. I closed my eyes tight as I suddenly heard a loud crunch, followed by silence. I looked down, keeping them closed as I heard the sawing stop. "See? You made it through. It wasn't that bad, right?" I hearing something drop to the floor. "Now, let's see how the actress, how you go through it. The audience is so amazed. They're speechless." Grand continued. I heard his footsteps. "Come on now. What do you think? Look how he got through it all. He's perfectly fine," he said. I could smell the terrible odor of his breath. My eyes remained closed. "Don't be rude towards the actor," he hissed. I felt a stinging sensation on my cheek as his hand made contact and my eyes slowly opened. My stomach turned when I saw him move out of the way, revealing Jasper. The box that Jasper was in was cut in half, just like his body, which dropped out with his organs as seconds passed. His eyes were bent upwards as his mouth was agape. My nausea increased and I vomited. "Now the audience is wanting to see the next trick," he clapped. "This one is my favorite." He went towards a box of swords, walking through the dead bodies. "Don't worry, my crowd. I shall give you my autograph later." He walked back towards me, holding the box of swords in his arms. Images flashed through my mind of my family. What were they going to do? My mom, dad, the rest of my family, Jasper's family? I didn't even bother to tell mine where I was going. How will they react when they see that we don't return? "Want to see a magic trick? The finale?" Grand asked the audience. He went silent for a few seconds. "That's fantastic," he replied, as if they had spoken back. He quickly grabbed one sword out of the box. This was my fault. Jasper was right. I found the website. I wanted to go here. This was all me. Me. Now it begins. I felt pain course through my body and I threw my head back crying. He had slammed his sword directly through my kidney. "You're doing so great so far, too," Gran said. I could hear a sword bump into another as he picked it out of the bunch. I braced myself for more pain, and soon another went through me, but through my shoulder. "Look at this! Perfect! 3!" He picked up another. I could just feel the other two swords in me, the blood drenching my clothes. I could feel it. Another sword went into me. I could feel it buried deep into my side, going towards my lungs. My nails dug deep into the wood, and I released another pain scream. Damn it! It's stuck! Grand gripped the handle of the sword with 2 hands, shoving it in with force, going through my ribcage. Now there we go. Don't worry, the trick is almost finished. 4, he grinned. I couldn't breathe. The taste of blood went into my mouth. How I was alive, I don't know. I'm sorry, Jasper. Rose, I'm so sorry, I weakly said. Finally, the last sword went deep into me, and he twisted it. I could hear Gran chuckle deeply as my life started to fade. He came close to me, whispering in my ear, Welcome to the audience. You can see the others shine now.
Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and I wanted to tell you all thank you so much for listening to tonight's story, or watching tonight's story if you're on YouTube. If you're not on YouTube, that means you're probably on the podcast that's available on iTunes, on the Google Play Store, and is now actually available on Spotify, and doesn't use as much data. So, hey, that's a thing. If you guys aren't listening on YouTube or Spotify, then I have no idea how else you could have found me. Unless you found one of those books on Amazon. You know, the Creepypasta Collection, Volume 1, Volume 2. Those are things too. Oh well, I don't know how you would have heard me there, seeing as this was recorded like 2 years after those came out. Well, anyway. Thanks for listening, folks. And sweet dreams.